Hello everyone, and welcome to the DashCast, where we go about trying to find the most interesting people in the world of cryptocurrencies, finance, and business. On this episode of the podcast, I had the fortunate privilege to sit down with Roger Ver, the CEO of Bitcoin.com. Being involved in the cryptocurrency space since 2011, Roger has not only been involved in crypto for some time, but has led a major charge in getting real merchant adoption as well as branding awareness of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Today, I not only get to talk to him about where he's putting his focus right now, what efforts he's currently involved in, but along with that as well, getting to learn a little bit more about who Roger is as an individual. Our sponsor for this podcast is TaxBit. The 2018 tax season has officially begun. TaxBit automates your entire tax filing process by linking up with your exchanges and wallets, running your transactions through their tax engine, and auto-generating all of your tax forms. 2018 was a tough year for most crypto users. TaxBit will help you recoup some of your losses by producing the tax forms you need to claim your tax refund. Sign up today using the promo code DATADASH to receive a 10% discount and a 100% money-back guarantee that your taxes will be taken care of this tax season. What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at DataDash, and welcome to this episode of the DashCast, where I'm very fortunate to have someone who has been in the cryptocurrency space for a very long time, has been a major proponent of Bitcoin from the early days, and has done a lot in regards to the marketing efforts for cryptocurrencies as a whole. Today, I'm here with Roger Ver. Roger, thank you so much for making time to do an episode here on the DashCast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicholas.
So first time we met was actually back in Malta, back a few months ago during the Delta Summit, and I was dying to have you on, hopefully sometime to chat with you. I know you keep busy in regards to the crypto space. You've invested in a lot of different startups in the crypto space. You've helped grow cryptocurrencies as a whole, and I've got a lot of things I want to talk to you about during the podcast, but I think the best thing to do from the get-go, as I usually do on the podcast, is usually just kind of get to know the person that I talk with a little bit better, and I think that a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space have joined in the past year or so, right? They got in back in 2017 or 2018. And I think a lot of people don't know that you've been around the space for a while. So I thought it'd be good maybe to talk a little bit before we even talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, kind of later down the road and what you've done in them. Where did you get your roots from? How did you find out about Bitcoin?
So I guess I kind of had the exact right background to be excited about it when I heard about it for the first time. So I grew up in Silicon Valley. Been around computers my entire life. I ran one of the most popular bulletin board systems for people that are old enough to even know what those were way back in the day. And then had my own tech companies that I started in Silicon Valley. And my hobby from a young age, and also like most young men, reading science fiction, of course, and studying economics. And so I had the right computer science background, and I had the right economics background. And then I had the big dreamer vision from the science fiction books to appreciate just how important cryptocurrency was going to be for the world when it first came along. So it was, I guess, a convergence of all those things, the computer science, the economics, and then the science fiction all together in one piece. And when Bitcoin came along, and when I heard about it for the first time, it felt like this thing that I'd been waiting for to come into existence finally was here. I've been waiting for it my whole life, and now it's here. And here I am. I've been involved 8 years full time now, and it's still just as exciting every single day. I can't wait to see what new things people are going to build and what I can help build and what areas I can help with to push adoption of people actually using cryptocurrencies as currency around the world.
Yeah, I remember in Malta you were talking about your story, and I really admire just how excited you were, Roger. I can't remember the analogy that you had used or the kind of situation that you went through. You were so excited about it when it first came out. Did you say that you had to be hospitalized? It was so exciting, like.
Yeah, so I guess I should go over that part of the story as well. So I had my original company was called Memory Dealers out there in Silicon Valley, and I had already moved to Japan, but I was back visiting, and I was eating breakfast at my place that I used to have in California that morning, listening to a libertarian-oriented podcast called Free Talk Live as I was eating breakfast, and on that podcast they talked about the Silk Road. And I've never bought, sold, or used any drugs at all. That's not something I'm interested in personally. But when I heard about the fact that they were able to buy and sell these things on the internet, I knew you couldn't do that with bank wires or credit cards or PayPal or anything like that. So I was like, well, what kind of money are they using for this? So I started Googling the thing that they had mentioned, Bitcoin. And then when I Googled Bitcoin, I realized that, oh my God, the type of money that I had read about in science fiction books, enabling people to be able to buy and sell anything anonymously on the internet, it was finally here. And because of my study of economics, I realized that this was the best form of money the world had ever seen. And I knew without any doubt that people were going to start using it as money, both from my experience reading economics books. And then there's a whole other deep story. I did some time in federal prison as well, where I got to see within the prison economy as well, the theories that I had read about in the books were actually true in practice. And things have to have certain characteristics in order for them to be useful as money. So they have to be easily recognizable, easily transportable. They actually have to have some other utility. They have to have a limited supply. And so all these characteristics in the prison economy are true of tobacco, right? Because you can smoke it. It's easy to recognize. You can't counterfeit it. There's limited supply. It's true of postage stamps because you can use it to mail letters. There's limited supply, blah, blah, blah. And same with top ramen soups, right? All these things are easy to store, transport. You can't counterfeit them. And so all of those things just naturally become used as money. And that was also in the theories in these economics books as to the origin of money. That has to have some alternate use case other than money. It has to have some utility. And then people just naturally will start using it as money. And so when Bitcoin came along, I had the theoretical evidence from the books, I had the empirical evidence from the prison experience, and I had the vision from the science fiction books as to how this is going to change the world. And then I had the computer science background to understand how Bitcoin to turn off the entire internet in the entire world and keep it turned off. And that's not realistic at this point. So I was so incredibly excited about all the ways this is going to change the world that I wound up not going to work that day. I just stayed home at my house the entire day, reading everything I could find about Bitcoin. And I'm someone who likes to go to bed on time and get, at least 7 hours of sleep each night. But not that night. I stayed up all night reading more about Bitcoin, stayed up the next morning reading about Bitcoin, stayed up until I think I went to bed around like maybe 4 p.m. the next afternoon, only slept for about an hour, and woke up again and then started reading about Bitcoin again, and then stayed up all night that night again, and then maybe went to bed at like 10 a.m. the next morning, only again for maybe an hour, hour and a half, woke up, started reading about it again, and that went on for about a week. And after about a week of only sleeping maybe less than 2 hours a night because I was so excited about Bitcoin, I literally didn't leave my house the entire time. I only had ordered food to be delivered so I could keep reading about Bitcoin the entire time. And after about a week of that, I got really, really, really sick. And I had to call one of my good friends and say, help me, I need you to take me to the hospital. And he was nice enough to drive over to my house because I couldn't even drive myself. I was so sick at that point. And he drove me to the hospital, and I was kind of in a daze at that point, but they gave me some sort of sedative or something like that. And I slept for, I don't know, maybe 18 hours straight or something. And then, but I woke up again, and it was all Bitcoin all day, every day. And that's been going on for 8 years now. And now I managed to get enough sleep each night, but every day when I'm awake, it's all about Bitcoin. And even when I leave the office or before I go to the office in the day, we're still doing, cryptocurrency stuff every day.
Well, that's a story to tell to talk about your first experience with crypto. But I mean, Roger, I like what you're saying in regards to, why Bitcoin seems so fundamentally exciting. I think a lot of people still see cryptocurrencies as a speculative asset class, and not really what it is. It's the next step in monetary evolution. So from, commodity-based economies where people are using shells and different types of things that they could find as a form of currency, to, for example, gold, and then to paper currency, and then to digital money, and now to a new form of digital money, which is cryptocurrency. I think it's a new evolution, the ability to have an e-cash with a transparent monetary policy, to have something that we can send anywhere across the world that doesn't require permission from third parties. It's extremely exciting. And
to have choice as to which form of money you decide to use.
Precisely, yeah. To have so many different, almost a free market of currencies in this case. I mean, God, we've already got to think too much right now with the 1,600 to 2,000 that we have. But in the sense of, all the applications for blockchain, I've always tried to press to people that as much as there is, there's business use cases for blockchain, supply chain logistics, notorieties, anything that can remove middlemen in this case. I've always been believing in the idea that currency is the ultimate application. Store of wealth in this case that can be transmitted is the killer application. We've been looking for some killer application over the past year, but I think that's really it. But yeah,
I agree. It's been there from day one. The killer app for cryptocurrencies is using them as currencies to buy and sell things and pay people and receive payments. And it's been there from day one. And that was the original use case. But we saw, with the Silk Road, that was the very first usage of Bitcoin, was people buying and selling things on the internet.
Yeah. In that case, Roger, with seeing this value in cryptocurrencies very early on and everything, you were mentioning memory dealers a little bit earlier in some of your early ventures. What kind of got you into the whole space? I'm assuming, I guess, being born in Silicon Valley was a little bit of a kickstart into kind of getting into the whole creation of businesses. But, what kind of got you into those early business ventures?
Yeah, I obviously I was really fortunate to have been born in Silicon Valley, and it was just kind of lucky. You could get a regular job, and back then I don't know, somebody my age, maybe a regular job would pay $8 an hour, $10 an hour, maybe $15 an hour if you got really lucky as just a kid. But then there were all these businesses um, that had all this excess computer parts, and like they were upgrading their servers and upgrading their networks and whatever, and then they had all this excess stuff that they would sell for just like pennies on the dollar. You could go on the San Jose Mercury News. This is before they had things on the internet to advertise this sort of stuff, really. And you would look in the classified section, and you would see every single week or weekend these companies would have like auctions where they're auctioning off, or just like basically having like company versions of garage sales where they're selling all their excess computer parts that they don't need anymore. And so I would go to some of these places and see the computer parts that they would have. And I had like one of the earliest smartphones. Like the screen was still black and white. So it was like an LCD, like, display. And I would try and search on the internet. I think this was before Google as well. So I don't know, I was using maybe like Alta Vista search engine or something like that. But I would try and search online what I could sell these same computer parts for that these companies had that were for sale. And I remember one of the very first purchases I ever made were these 9 GB SCSI hard drives. And I could buy them for $100 each from this company that had upgraded to maybe like 18 gig drives or something like that. And I could buy them for $100 each, and I could sell them online for around $350 each. So I would make, $250 profit per drive. And so I took every penny that I had of savings from changing oil at an oil change place, at like a Jiffy Lube type place. I had about $1,000. So I bought 10 of these hard drives for $1,000, and then I turned around and sold them on the internet for like $300 and something each. And it took less than a week to sell them all. And I was like, wait a minute, I just made, close to $3,000 in a week. This is really good. I should do this more. And so I went and bought more and more, and then just started flipping them more and more. And then eventually we started focusing on computer memory, because computer memory is very high value and small and easy to ship, whereas like whole computers or even hard drives are much more fragile and more expensive to ship, and you have to be more careful with them. So we started focusing on memory, and then eventually Cisco memory. And then I don't think I've ever talked about this part of it on a podcast before, but eventually, as we were focusing on Cisco memory, the Cisco machines, maybe they'll use, 1, 2, maybe 8 or even 16 pieces of memory, but these same machines can use hundreds of these things called optical transceivers. So back then they were called GBICs, which stands for Gigabit Internet Converter or something like that. Now the new form factor is SFP or whatever. But anyhow, we started selling, SFPs and optical transceivers like crazy. And we started a whole other brand called AgileStar. And even to this very day, if you go on eBay and if you search for AgileStar, you'll see all sorts of my used parts are still being sold on eBay. And just maybe a year or so ago, I closed everything down in the U.S. and cut all of my financial ties with the U.S. But it's fun to see these parts that we sold to people all over the world are still being sold today on eBay as used parts. But it was that company, Memory Dealers, that was the very, very first established company in the entire world that actually had like a real ongoing business that, as an enterprise, we were the very first one in the entire world to start accepting Bitcoin for payments. And this was back in 2011. And right away, I paid to have a billboard put up on the side of Lawrence Expressway, which is one of the busiest expressways in Silicon Valley. And it said, "We accept Bitcoin, memorydealers.com." And it got worldwide media attention. And literally newspapers in Germany were reporting on this billboard in Silicon Valley because we were accepting Bitcoin, because it was the first time it was an actual real business with a real website and people that showed up to work every day, and they weren't just selling homemade handicrafts. It was accepting cryptocurrency for a business. Like about the only business other than that at this point was some guy, and credit to him, like thank you to the alpaca sock guy. There was some guy that was making socks out of alpaca wool, and like full credit to him where credit is due, but like that wasn't really in the same level as, Memory Dealers, a business with, multi-millions of dollars in sales each year, and had been around for, well over a decade already at that point. So it really made the entire world look at Bitcoin in a different way, because suddenly now here's a real established business with like customers like, IBM and 3Com and AT&T and Verizon and NASA and like, pretty much any company you can think of. They bought our products from Memory Dealers, mainly our optical transceivers, but our memory as well. And it really set the tone for the adoption of cryptocurrency around the world. And then at the same time, I also started paying for national radio ads for Bitcoin on more than 100 radio stations across the entire United States, just plain advertising Bitcoin and telling people to go and visit bitcoin.org to learn more. And if you go on YouTube, you'll find the radio ad from like 2011. We hired one of those guys with a real deep, raspy voice just to do the voiceover. And he's talking about how this is, a paradigm change in the evolution of humankind. And it's a really, really well done, powerful commercial, if I do say so myself. And I paid for that, commercials to go on, national radio to this very day. I've been paying for national cryptocurrency radio ads from 2011 until today on more than, I think it's like 150 radio stations across the U.S. at this point.
I mean, yeah, that's awesome, Raj. That's one thing that I really admire is because, you come in a background in this sense in the crypto space from really being a marketer for crypto. You have invested a lot of money into getting the word out there about cryptocurrencies. You've done it in really bold ways, not to mention just accepting it through your company alone was a huge step, I think, in that case. But I mean, it's immense to see how the space has changed in that case. And to think, just back a few years ago, it was this kind of tabloid thing. For example, you mentioned the alpaca socks. I remember when I first saw the What is Bitcoin video, when they were telling me where I could go spend it, I was so confused. I was like, there's no real merchants I can go do business with. And nowadays, I mean, like you've mentioned, it started to expand, not so much here, I think, in the United States, but really in a lot of different regions of the world, prominently in Asia, in South Korea, and where you live right now in Tokyo and Japan. That's one thing I was actually curious about, to talk with you, because I've talked with people in the Korean space, I've talked to people in Singapore, but I'm really curious, you've kind of fallen in love. I remember when we were in Malta in the elevator, you were telling me that I mentioned I'd been to Singapore, Thailand, and the Philippines, and you told me I had to go to Japan. You told me I had to go. So I'm hoping to go over the next few months, but what's the space looking like there in Japan? Because the merchant adoption there, I think, is far outpacing anywhere else in the world from what we've seen.
Yeah, not to get too political, but the merchant adoption ground to a halt and then even reversed when the fees became high on Bitcoin with the blocks becoming full. And now that merchant adoption is starting to come back here in Japan with Bitcoin Cash. There's probably more merchants currently accepting Bitcoin Cash than there are accepting BTC in Japan. The BTC meetup group basically kind of disbanded, and that's the one that I started back here in Japan. But the Bitcoin Cash meetup group has dozens of people showing up every single week, and it's a great time every single Wednesday. So for anybody that's in Tokyo or visiting Tokyo, come to our Wednesday Bitcoin Cash meetup group. It's a lot of fun. And it's not just a Bitcoin Cash meetup group. It's anybody can talk about any cryptocurrency they want. We welcome anybody to talk about anything they want. So anyone's welcome, and lots of people do. But there's a great app called Marco Coino where you can see around the world the businesses that are accepting Bitcoin Cash around you. And there's, I don't know, like 35 in Tokyo. And I don't think that there's nearly as many that are accepting BTC at this point. So I think, as you mentioned earlier, like the killer app for cryptocurrencies is using them as currency. And if you think that they're just supposed to be a speculative asset or just supposed to be a store value, you've kind of missed the entire point. You've missed all the exciting things that they can enable. If you're only using it as a speculative asset, you're missing out on all the amazing things that are going to be enabled thanks to cryptocurrencies. Things like permissionless trade on the internet or prediction markets or all sorts of like amazing tools that are going to push humankind forward and human civilization forward.
Yeah, I think it's a problem, like generally in the West, that we tend not to see the actual value of it because we've always had a relatively stable currency. As much as I could ramble on about central banks, we've always had a relatively stable currency. We have a relatively stable banking system comparative to a lot of developing nations, and for example, a lot of areas of the world that are unbanked at the moment. So I think we just don't see through that sometimes and see the real value, as we mentioned, kind of taking that next leap and building a new tool for finance. Surpassing digital currency that we previously had in gold. It's a whole new form of money, which really excites me.
Yeah, speaking of gold, if I can add to that, so for people that are old enough, there was this company to remember. There was this company called eGold back in like the late 90s, and I was one of their earliest customers and one of their biggest promoters. And all my eBay auctions, I accept had big giant thing. We accept eGold. And this was back before PayPal. There was no PayPal. People were literally having to mail physical money orders in the mail to my address. And I remember being so excited to get the mail every day to see like which auction winners actually paid for their orders and sent me U.S. postal money orders in the mail. But it was so fun being able to accept eGold from people all over the world. And I'm sure I brought lots of new people to start using eGold. But as for anybody that studied e-gold, they'll know that the problem with e-gold was that it was a centralized company. And as soon as it started to get popular and started to get enough traction, the U.S. government came in and literally stole all the gold from all the customers of eGold, like myself. And they did that because a few of the eGold customers were using it for things that the U.S. government didn't like. But like everybody lost out and didn't get to use the service because a few bad people were doing bad things with it. So gold was fantastic money, but the problem with it is that it's so easy for government to control. Hopefully that won't be the case with actual cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. I had a Peter Schiff on a while back, not so much on the DashCast, but we had him on the channel before. And the issue that I always kept on bringing up to him is, you know, again, people just still continue to see crypto in the speculative nature. But if you take all the properties of desired money in this case, like gold had a lot of things, for example, that currencies don't offer. In the sense, gold is limited, but in a sense, it's not easily divisible. It's very hard to divide because of the fact you have to smelt it down or break it into fractions in some way, shape, or form. It's not good for transporting globally or doing global commerce and stepping into a world of globalism and global business. That's not really a good trait to have. And currency brought in a lot of those things, but it didn't have the limited aspect or the finite aspect that cryptocurrencies offer. So I always try to press that again. It's taking all of the good properties of gold and the good properties of currency and merging them to one. And in fact, going a leap ahead of gold in the sense of being finite in many cases, in the case of Bitcoin and Monero and Dash and a lot of these major players. So that's what I'm excited about. And I think, again, once we get into the right markets, you know, in Venezuela and a lot of other developing economies, that's when we're really going to start to see the value come into play for crypto.
And mentioning Peter Schiff, I'd really like to give credit where credit is due. Peter Schiff's father, Erwin Schiff, wrote a fantastic book called How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. And that was one of the books that I read as a very young man. And it was one of the books that helped me appreciate the origin of money and how, and the book outlines very clearly how things become used as money and how capital in the market is so important to be able to produce more goods so that people can have a higher standard of living. And it was from reading, you know, that book and others that I was able to appreciate, oh my God, Bitcoin is going to be money. People are going to use it as money. This is the best money the world's ever seen. And so it seems really, really strange that, you know, Peter Schiff's father, Erwin Schiff, would have had, you know, he literally wrote a book that helped me understand why Bitcoin was going to be used as money. And it's really disappointing to see that that Peter Schiff isn't able to see the same thing that I think his father would have been able to see. And for those that don't know, I guess I'll call out, you know, shame on the U.S. government again. So Peter Schiff's father, Erwin Schiff, literally died in federal prison about a year ago because they tossed him in jail because they didn't like the type of books he was writing and the ideas he was espousing. And he was basically claiming that the income tax is unconstitutional or illegal. I don't think it is, but like he's entitled to his opinion. And the fact that they tossed this old man in jail and left him there until he died really shows what type of horrible people these people in government are. And they literally say, you're going to give us your money, and if you don't, we'll lock you in a cage until you die. And that's exactly what they did to Peter Schiff's father, who's a great man. Erwin Schiff was a great man, and it's horrible what the U.S. government did to him. So that's my political rant for the moment.
Oh, wow. I mean, so was he not paying income tax, or was it like simply because he wrote, was he almost in a sense getting accused of incentivizing people not to pay income taxes? Do you know, like
that's why they were mad, is they were claiming that they were mad because he was telling other people not to pay income tax because he was claiming that you don't have to. And he had some sort of theory that at the end of the day, I think he was probably wrong on the theory, but he genuinely believed that like the income tax only applies to like corporations and not to individual people. And he was telling people like, don't pay it. And at the end of the day, like they claim that the government is made up of a bunch of representatives, right? They call the Congress our representatives. Well, how can a representative have more rights than those that they claim to represent? Like if I don't have the right to tax my neighbor, I don't have the ability to delegate that right to somebody else in Congress. So it's just, you know, Orwellian doublespeak to call those people representatives. They're not representatives. They're masters who are bossing everybody else around, and they bossed Erwin Schiff right into a cage until he died for having a different opinion than they did. And it's really really horrible that they did that to him.
It's a tragic story. I had no idea about that because I've known about Peter for years. Peter was one of the kind of first eyes when I opened up my eyes to kind of the alternative views of finance back, you know, after 2008, towards 2010, 2011, really. But yeah, it's tragic. I'll have to look into that. And in that case, Roger, you know, we're talking about kind of the moral ramifications of crypto here. And I want to spend some time to ask you something that I always try to ask a variety of people who fall into this camp that I fit into, of the peer-to-peer digital currency movement within crypto. What do you believe are the principles that we need to stride towards developing for cryptocurrencies? So we've obviously got a lot of great traits. We've got immutability, censorship resistance, peer-to-peer transactions. We've got a lot of great things already off the bat, but this space is so early. We have less than 1% of global adoption. What's going to be the thing that's really going to help carry us towards the larger portion of the world? What features do we need? Is it along the lines of privacy, things of that sort?
Of course, fungibility is one of the things that makes money, and fungibility is just another way of saying privacy, right? So every crypto coin has to be the same as every other crypto coin on that network. Otherwise, it's not fungible. So if you want the use case as money, you need to have fungibility. And so I think we need to work on that. But I guess the part that's been so frustrating for me is with this big shift in the narrative as to what cryptocurrency is supposed to be, from money to just being a speculative asset. We've lost years of adoption, and governments move slowly, but now they're catching up, and the regulators are trying to figure out how they can control this, what I hope will be an uncontrollable technology that puts individuals in charge of their own lives. But now every government in the world is busy looking at cryptocurrencies, figuring out how they're going to try and regulate and control them. And we're seeing businesses, literally put out billboards saying we're regulated, right? And you're talking, and you hear all these people talking about compliance. Well, if you stop and think about it for a moment, like compliance, well, that's just another word for obedience. So they might as well just be out there saying, we're obedient. Well, like, I guess it's fine to be obedient to somebody who has a good idea, but if what the things that people are promoting aren't good ideas, like, you shouldn't be obedient. Nobody in Venezuela should be obedient to Maduro, right? Nobody in North Korea should be obedient to Kim Jong-un. And if Trump or the Congress are putting out bad ideas, nobody should be obedient to them either. So, like, good people disobey bad laws, and I see cryptocurrencies as a tool to help enable people good people to disobey those bad laws. So, like, let's build the tools to enable good people to disobey these bad laws and ignore these bad politicians that have bad ideas that are, retarding the rate of economic growth of the entire world. So for me, that's the goal of cryptocurrencies, is let's build the tools that enable people to build a better world, despite the politicians trying to stop it. I don't think anybody at this point can argue that, the Venezuelan people are better off because of the government they've had. And I think some arguments made of just about every country in the world. But, Venezuela is an especially obvious example at the moment.
Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of the adoption is going to start off in South America. And one thing you were bringing up, Roger, I think, in the sense of not disobedience, but, kind of speaking with your money, the thing that a lot of people don't realize about cryptocurrencies and people switching their purchasing power and their business activity over to cryptocurrencies, it's a way that you can actually, really speak with your money to the government. And this isn't meaning to avoid taxes, but what it means is if you're going towards taking away the trust in the traditional system, the value in the traditional currency, you actually take away a lot of the power of the government to continuously borrow billions of dollars from the central bank to fund war, to fund all of these major financial operations. And that's something that I really admire. And I'm sad. It's sad I don't hear it enough in the space. I know you've brought it up before. I know Stefan Molyneux and a lot of other people who are very early Bitcoin people had mentioned that fact, that when we take control of our money, you take control away from big government. And that's, I think, it's a libertarian view, but I think it's something that a lot of people agree with. I think that's becoming a more popular view, is taking away that control in that manner.
And I hope it becomes more popular. Yeah, that's you nailed it right there on the head. So we need to have a separate. Everybody knows that a separation of church and state is a good thing. Mm-hmm. We need to have a separation of money and state as well, and that's what cryptocurrencies I'm hoping will enable.
I'm glad we agree on that. Yeah, and there was one thing I wanted to bring up. You were mentioning fungibility and privacy, which I agree. I think it's the next step if you're going to be building peer-to-peer digital cash. That's kind of what you need in that case. And I don't think we're there just yet, but we're close. In that sense of privacy and fungibility, do you have an excitement? Do you have any excitement over Mimblewimble? A lot of the new technologies coming up. I know we did a video recently talking about Mimblewimble. Does that excite you at all, or is there any other pieces of tech that you're kind of focusing on right now?
I don't know enough about it to have a real strong opinion there. From what I know about Monero, I think that's pretty awesome. Zcash, Zcoin have optional private transactions, mm-hmm. which are interesting. Bullberry's another interesting one that's out there. But I'm the CEO of Bitcoin.com, so we're focused on Bitcoin Cash all day, every day. And the big thing that we're working on at the moment is to bring really, really strong privacy to Bitcoin Cash right from within the Bitcoin.com wallet using a CoinJoin. And so that's coming very, very soon to the Bitcoin.com wallet, where you'll have strong privacy right there within the Bitcoin.com wallet. And I guess that's another thing that I think a lot of people that are new to the space, they don't understand the difference between a cryptocurrency wallet and a cryptocurrency bank. And there's lots and lots of cryptocurrency banks out there calling themselves wallets. And the difference is very simple. This is a wallet. The pieces of paper that are in this wallet, I have control over. If I put these pieces of paper in a bank, then the bank has control over them, and I can only ask the bank to give them back to me. And so, like a lot of people, Coinbase is a wonderful, wonderful company, but they're a cryptocurrency bank. They're not a cryptocurrency wallet. And a lot of people confuse things with like Coinbase as being cryptocurrency wallets. They're not. And even I saw that there's a new Lightning Network software app out there that they're calling a Lightning wallet, but it's not. If you look at how it works, it's just a bank where some other group are running the Lightning node for you out there. So make sure you understand the difference between a bank and a wallet. It's a very, very important distinction within the cryptocurrency area.
So in that case, is it like you were talking about the Lightning Network node? Is it basically that the node is actually holding the funds for you, or is it that you operate your own node in this case? So
the specific one out there was called, I think, Satoshi Wallet, I think, or something.
Wallet. Yeah,
I have to go again. I think it was from and from my taking a maybe 10-minute look at it. It looks like they're handling everything for you, and you just have this app on your phone that you then can instruct their node what to do on your behalf. But good luck with that in the future if there's a problem, right? I'm not saying that they're going to intentionally run away with your money, but they could be hacked, or the government could come to them and say, do this or do that. So, I'm a big fan of actual wallets rather than banks. So.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'll have to look into it honestly, because I've looked at some of the operations with Lightning Network and everything, and some of the wallet technologies. They're finally getting to the point where there's some interface, at least operating with Lightning Network. It used to be all command line stuff where only computer geeks who are working on it would really understand it. But yeah, I'm glad to see that there's some UI developing for it, and I'm eager to see what will happen with it. And one thing I wanted to bring up, Roger, in this case, we were talking about privacy and fungibility. In regards to marketing for cryptocurrencies, which I think you're very skilled at. You've done marketing throughout a lot of your life with a lot of businesses you've created, and you've helped get Bitcoin out there. What's the kind of next big step that we have to take to get crypto in the mainstream? I know there's a really cool effort going on that's trying to get. It's actually just donating a lot of crypto out to Venezuela right now, and I think there's some people have put up Bitcoin Cash. They've put up Bitcoin and Ethereum and a variety of other cryptocurrencies like Zcash, a lot of privacy-focused coins as well. What are some good ways we can get crypto out there in this sense? A lot of us who are really active in the ecosystem.
I think the best thing any of us can do is actually build businesses based around it. So if you're running a business, you have a lot of influence and a lot of things that you can do with that business. So that's one thing. And then those businesses that are out there, we need to make cryptocurrency more useful than the alternatives. It has to be so useful and so easy and fast and cheap and reliable that people just naturally want to start using cryptocurrency instead of PayPal, instead of Bank of America, instead of Visa, instead of MasterCard. We need to make it so incredibly useful that people that don't care about central banking, they don't care about the Federal Reserve, they don't care about any political stuff at all. They just think, oh, using cryptocurrency is more convenient than using my bank account. I'm going to use cryptocurrency. That's where we need to get to. And that's what we need to do. And, let's all get together and build those tools to make it even more useful. And so right before we started the call here, I have another screen right above the screen that I'm looking at here. On the left is Purse.io. On the right is Amazon. And I'm copying and pasting the things that I need from Amazon into Purse.io. Anybody that's not aware of Purse.io, it lets you get 20% off every single purchase from Amazon. That's a huge, huge savings. So an item that's normally $100, you only have to pay $80 worth of Bitcoin Cash to get your $100 item from Amazon. And so I'm also a big fan of spend and replace. So everyone's shopping on Amazon anyhow. We'll take the dollars that you would have normally used to buy things on Amazon with your credit card, use them to buy Bitcoin Cash, and then go and spend it on Purse.io. And then you can either spend $80 to buy your Bitcoin Cash, and then you're left over with $20 in your bank account, or you can spend all $100 on Bitcoin Cash, spend the $80 worth of it on Purse.io, and then you're left with $20 of Bitcoin Cash. Either way, you're far better off. You're winding up with $20 more money than you would have had if you had just spent the dollars directly on Amazon. So I think that's a really, really fantastic tool. And I'm hoping the Purse.io guys can refine and polish their interface to make it just as easy as Amazon is using it directly, so that people want to use it, not because they want to, undermine the Federal Reserve, just because they can save, 20% on their next order of, toilet paper. And so everybody's just using it for everything all the time. That's what we need to do. And I'm looking forward to building those tools. Yeah,
I've had a belief that cryptocurrencies won't go mainstream until two things. A, people don't realize they're using cryptocurrencies, and they're just simply using, a form of, just like they would with traditional currencies, a form of store value and transfer value. And the second thing as well is that,
or just like when they're using, voice over IP, they don't know all of the underlying tech that happens behind the scenes. It just works and it's convenient for them, so they use it.
Interesting you mentioned that. We actually had Alex Mazinski on, who was the founder of VoIP and everything, which is really cool. It felt kind of ironic because we were doing a call over a peer, which we're using now, and it was using the same protocol he helped build. But he's actually, he's gotten into cryptocurrencies right now, doing a Celsius Network, which is like a crypto lending platform. I think back to that point stuff, not only do you have to make it seamless in that case where you not even know you're using cryptos, but it has to be easier than using traditional banking systems. Now, I don't think that's a hard competition to beat. I think, banks have been quite behind. They just caught up to Venmo and a lot of the cash sharing apps between friends. And not to mention, I think we've already blown out of the water Swift and a lot of other traditional systems. But I mean, again, it is going to be a challenge. And finally, banks have a little bit of competition in the game. So that's interesting to see. But, in summary, Roger, one thing I wanted to ask you as well is who are some of the people that you personally admire in this space? So we're talking about a lot of economists and people that you look up to. You're talking about Schiff's father. I know, for example, you're a big Mises fan as well. I mean, what are some of the people in this space right now who you've known either for like a long time or people you trust that you should recommend to people to just check out in the space?
Yeah, I'm a really, really big fan of Gavin Andresen, and it was shocking and surprising to me. But recently, I was watching another podcast with what's the guy, Doug Polk, the crypto podcast. Yeah. He's some poker player, and he was talking with Brian Micon, who's been in Bitcoin since the early days and set up one of the very, very first poker websites to use Bitcoin. And Brian Micon mentioned Gavin Andresen, and Doug Polk, who does a crypto podcast, I think maybe daily, I'm not sure. He didn't know who Gavin was. And it was stunning to me that anybody could be in the crypto space and not know who Gavin is. But he didn't know, and that's okay. You can't know everything from day one. But it was shocking to me that people wouldn't know who Gavin is. And for anybody that's listening to this who doesn't know who Gavin is, Gavin was literally the person that Satoshi Nakamoto turned over the project to when Satoshi decided to disappear. And Gavin was, I think, the best steward of Bitcoin that Bitcoin's ever had. Under his, watch and benevolent dictatorship there, it grew to become this worldwide phenomenon, and it was a stable platform that worked reliably, and then people around the world just naturally started using his money, and he was a very calm, thoughtful, great person for Bitcoin in general. And so I have a huge amount of respect for Gavin. Another person I have a huge amount of respect for is whoever it was behind the keyboard writing as Satoshi on the forums. Like, a lot of people like to talk about Satoshi this or Satoshi that. Well, go and read the post that this guy wrote. Like, whoever he was a really calm and clear and concise person. And he did an excellent job of just laying it out there and using his time efficiently. Like, he told one guy at some other point, like, sorry, if you don't believe me, I don't have time to try and convince you. And he's going to move on. But like, using your time efficiently is really, really important too. Like, life is short. And Satoshi really did a good job on that front. Mike Hearn was another fantastic person that Bitcoin had. So for people that don't know who Mike Hearn was, he was another early Bitcoiner, much earlier than me. He wrote Bitcoin J, which was a full node implementation. He wrote that all by himself, I believe, from scratch. And he was literally a professional capacity planner at Google. He was in charge of planning for future capacity at Google. That's like, those are some really, really impressive qualifications. And sadly, both of those incredibly qualified, incredibly wonderful, honest, straightforward, great people for the adoption of Bitcoin. They were basically driven from the Bitcoin community by a bunch of people that like to use censorship and don't view Bitcoin as being usable for money, and they don't think it can or should be money for the world. So I guess one other person I really like is an author, is Nathaniel Popper, who kind of wrote one of the very first, histories of Bitcoin. He wrote a book called Digital Gold, and I don't really like the name of the book, but the book itself is a fantastic overview of Bitcoin from the beginning until I think the book ends in maybe, 2013 or 14 or something like that. And it's available on Amazon. You can save 20% by using Bitcoin Cash on Purse.io when you buy it. So it's even more fun to buy this sort of book with cryptocurrency. But anybody that wants to learn about the origin of Bitcoin and the history of the space, Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper is a fantastic book. And, you'll see all these early players in the space. And another person I really like and respect and admire is Wences Casares as well. He's the founder of Zappo, and he had a lot of really traditional, big money connections. And from the earliest days of Bitcoin, he was literally promoting Bitcoin to people like Bill Gates way, way, way back in the early days. Wow. And all these people that had started big, successful businesses. Wences was busy, running in their social circles, promoting Bitcoin to all of them. So Wences really did a fantastic job on that front as well. And another guy that maybe a lot of people won't know or have never even heard of is a guy named Ben Reeves. And people, I'm guessing, maybe, do you know who Ben Reeves is? Or
it's interesting. Most of the names you were bringing up beforehand came to mind, but I actually don't know Ben specifically.
And I think a lot of people won't know who he is, but you'll know his website for sure. So the website this guy started while living at home in his bedroom at his mom's house there. He started a website called blockchain.info. All by himself. And when I first reached out to him, this was, I think, 2012, and there was nobody really investing in the space at that point, but I knew of this website, and like the whole, it didn't have that many users at this point. It was, I think, one of the very first block explorers and one of the very first online, actual wallets, not a bank. And I reached out to him. I said, hey, I'm a fan of Bitcoin. I want to do whatever I can to help it grow. Do you need any money to expand what you're doing? And he was working on it all by himself. And he replied, and he said, well, the website's currently running on a Mac Mini in his bedroom at home. And he said, I think it's probably about time we buy a real server because it's starting to actually get, a fair amount of traffic. And so he needed some money to buy a real server in a data center. So I gave him the money to help do that and do more. And a lot of people won't know this. I was the second person ever involved at Blockchain and Info. Ben was doing the programming, and I was doing the customer service. I was answering support tickets on blockchain.info. So back in 2012, if you filled out a support ticket needing help with your blockchain.info wallet, I was the one that answered your support tickets back then, myself or Ben. So Ben, I would escalate the ones that I couldn't help direct with to Ben. So, and a lot of people don't know Ben because like lots of software developers, he's really, really quiet and hardly talks at all. But he's an absolute genius programmer, and the fact that he built that entire website basically all by himself in the beginning and got it to where it had millions of users with almost no help at all is a real testament to his skill and his drive and his determination. So Ben Reeves, he's definitely somebody I admire in the space as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've used blockchain.info a lot. I use the wallet personally on my phone. I mean, one of the best mobile wallets I've seen, not to mention I love using it. For example, I'll carry a little bit of Bitcoin on it. And what I usually do is, and I know something you do, Roger, as well, that I really admire, is that when you go to conferences, when you go to meetups, or if you're just talking to people about crypto, you give them $5 or $10 worth of Bitcoin, right? And, just give them a little bit of crypto in that case, just something to, kind of get a feel for it and have a little bit of stake in it. And I think that's always one of the best things you can do. But I mean, yeah, the names you mentioned, again, a lot of names that have kind of gotten lost because I think there's a lot of flash and hype in the space. I think there's a lot of great people who are probably more well known, like CZ. A lot of the people who run exchanges and some of the bigger businesses that draw more eyes. I think they're good, but at the same time, for the space that we have now, I think it's good to understand the roots and understand some of the core developers that have been in this space for a very long time. So, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, we're pretty much at 1% adoption in the cryptocurrency space. And I guess we're working every day to bring that to 100%. It's going to be a long journey, but should be coming hopefully in the next few decades. And Roger, more than anything, I'm extremely impressed and thankful for the stuff that you've done for cryptocurrencies, for the adoption of it, but more than anything, understanding really why it matters in this world more than anything. So thanks for making the time just to even come on here and just talk about these things. It was really exciting.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and the platform. I appreciate it as well.
And we'll have to have you back on sometime soon. I think there's a lot of interesting things changing the space, but more than anything, like what you guys are doing, and can't wait to see what Bitcoin.com brings and to continue to see where cryptocurrencies go over the next few years.
I'd love to, and maybe the next time if you make it out to Tokyo for a visit, we can do one in person live.
Yeah, so. Definitely. I'm hoping to make it to Tokyo. The one thing is there's still the 3 big areas of crypto in the world that I haven't been to are China, Japan, and South Korea. So I've got to make it out there, and yeah, we'll definitely do a video sometime just talking through about an update of where you are and where everything's going.
We have an open invitation anytime. So thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate it. And that's going to be it for this episode of the DashCast. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning into this episode. And if you liked it, please leave a thumbs up down below, as well as sharing it with a family or friend member. And if you can think of someone you'd like to see on the next episode, please leave a comment down below. I want to go ahead and give a real quick shout out to Roger for coming on to the DashCast. It was not only a privilege to have some time to sit down and talk, as well as gaining some insight as to where he sees the crypto space going, but along with that as well, it was really awesome to see a side of Roger that I think many people don't see that shows what he's truly driven by, and that is real merchant adoption for cryptocurrencies. So I wish Roger all the best in his efforts, and hopefully we'll have him back on to the DashCast in the future to see what he's up to. Our sponsor for this podcast is TaxBit. The 2018 tax season has officially begun. TaxBit automates your entire tax filing process by linking up with your exchanges and wallets, running your transactions through their tax engine, and auto-generating all of your tax forms. 2018 was a tough year for most crypto users. TaxBit will help you recoup some of your losses by producing the tax forms you need to claim your tax refund. Sign up today using the promo code DATADASH to receive a 10% discount and a 100% money-back guarantee that your taxes will be taken care of this tax season.